Elena Chin was still swimming out of anesthesia when they wheeled her from recovery. A nurse held the surgical consent form to her face. She signed with her one good hand, stroke by labored stroke. Her colleague lingered by the gurney, pity soft in her eyes. "Your family, they're really not coming." Elena smiled. "Thin. Tired. They're all out of town." The truth sat 37 minutes away by taxi. Her mother's house. She'd timed it once. 3 hours later, Yulan finally called. Not to check on her. To remind her about the weekend. "Your brother-in-law's promotion. We're having a dinner. Don't forget." Elena laid the phone on her pillow and let it talk to the ceiling. 2 minutes later she picked it up, catching the tail end, "And don't come empty-handed. That would be tacky." She stared at the white hospital's ceiling and thought back to the summer she turned 7. Her sister Yao had a high fever. Their mother carried Yao to the hospital in the middle of the night and locked Elena inside the apartment alone. Storm outside. 7-year-old Elena curled under the blankets, shaking, telling herself her mother would be back soon. Morning came. Her mother hadn't come back. Hungry enough to try anything, she dragged a stool to the stove and tried to make congee by herself. She scalded the whole back of her left hand. Yulan finally walked in the next afternoon, Yao's fever broken, glanced at the blisters, and said, "How could you be so careless?" The scar was still there. Faint, like a faded plum blossom. Elena closed her eyes and turned the screen off. Some people don't love you because you're not good enough. They don't love you because when they look at you, they see someone else's face. A face that wasn't hers. A face that had made her the only outsider in that house from the day she was born. She was in the lab, studying the latest batch of embryonic stem cell differentiation data, when her mother called again. "Elena, come home this weekend. Your brother-in-law got promoted. We're having a celebration." Yulan's voice brimmed with barely suppressed glee. Elena's fingers paused on the trackpad. On the screen, a cluster of blue fluorescent cells divided quietly, like a flower blooming in silence. "I have experiments this weekend." What experiment could be more important than your brother-in-law's news? Yulan's voice pitched higher. Yuan Chang is now the youngest associate chief physician at Jiangda University Hospital. Do you know how many people would kill for that position? Your sister had such good judgment, finding a catch like him. Elena set the phone down on the lab bench and let it run. 2 minutes later she picked it up, catching the end, "And don't forget to bring a gift. Don't show up empty-handed and embarrass yourself." The line went dead. She stared at the fluorescent glow on her screen. She remembered the last time she'd been home. Yao had been sitting on the sofa, their mother feeding her bird's nest soup spoon by spoon. Yao was 5 months pregnant then. Yulan had taken early retirement to wait on her hand and foot. She was afraid Yao might strain her fingers just peeling an apple. 3 years earlier, when Elena had been hospitalized for acute appendicitis, Yulan had said over the phone, "You're in medicine yourself. Just ask a colleague to look after you, can't you? I can't get away right now. Your sister's in a critical period for her grad school exams." She'd signed her own surgical consent form while lying in that hospital bed. Her colleague's eyes were full of pity. She'd smiled and said, "My family's all out of town." All out of town. Her father was doing business in the next city. Her mother was home cooking for her sister. The distance from her hospital to her mother's house was 37 minutes. By taxi. Elena shut down the microscope system, saved her data, and typed a note in her phone, "Go home this weekend. Bring gift." Then she opened her browser and searched the talent recruitment page on Jiangda University Hospital's website. Yuan Chang certainly looked the part. He wore a flawlessly tailored navy shirt, cufflinks that Yao had given him, Cartier, no less. He clinked glasses with friends and relatives who'd come to offer congratulations, his smile both reserved and self-satisfied. Yao leaned into him, her pregnancy belly prominent under a cream-colored maternity dress, her face radiating happiness. Yuan Chang was always such a smart boy, Yulan said, her eyes crinkling with pride. I could tell he was going places even back in high school. And sure enough. Mom, don't overdo it, Yuan said modestly, though his expression said he was enjoying every word. Elena walked in right at the peak of the family praise fest. She carried 2 bottles of Feitian Mutai in her hands, good stuff she'd had someone bring back from Guizhou province the week before. Not cheap, but not ostentatious either. Respectable. Elena's here. Yulan's eyes zeroed in on the bag in her hands, and her face brightened instantly. That's more like it. Put it over there. Your sister can't drink, we'll have your brother-in-law take it home. Elena set the liquor down by the coffee table and swept her eyes around the room. Mostly relatives from her mother's side. Her father Jiangwo had come back from his business trip and was out on the balcony smoking and chatting with some uncles. No one noticed she'd arrived. No one asked what she did for work. No one cared how she was doing. She'd been invisible in this house for 26 years. She was used to it. Elena, go get the fruit platter from the kitchen, Yulan called out. Can't the housekeeper do it? Her aunt teased. She's always been the one who likes to help out, Yulan said matter-of-factly. Not like Yao. Yao was born to be spoiled. Elena said nothing. She turned and went into the kitchen. The housekeeper was cutting watermelon. She looked flustered when Elena walked in. Miss Chin, I can handle this. It's fine. Elena leaned against the kitchen counter and watched the living room through the glass door. Yao and Yuan were holding hands, accepting congratulations from the relatives. Yulan sat beside them, beaming, as if her daughter's marriage to Yuan Chang was the greatest achievement of her life. Her phone buzzed. She looked down. A transfer notification. Funds received from the M-Country Institute of Cell Biology. Total, 34 million yuan. This was the patent licensing fee for her targeted mitochondrial replacement technology, signed just yesterday. The technique could precisely eliminate defective mitochondrial DNA from oocytes, fundamentally blocking mother-to-child transmission of dozens of hereditary mitochondrial diseases. It had sent shockwaves through the global assisted reproduction field. Her other independent breakthrough, endometrial stem cell in situ induction and regeneration technology, a treatment for severe intrauterine adhesions causing infertility, was already in phase 2 clinical trials. Its valuation was climbing at a dizzying speed. No one knew. Not a single person in the Qin family knew that the good-for-nothing, clueless, bookworm Elena Qin was already one of the most sought-after young scientists in global assisted reproductive medicine. She leaned against the counter and thought back to that summer when she was 7. Yao had a high fever. Yulan carried her to the hospital in the middle of the night, leaving Elena locked in the apartment. It was storming. 7-year-old Elena curled up under the covers, trembling, certain her mother would come back soon. Morning came. Her mother still hadn't returned. She got so hungry she dragged a stool to the stove and tried to cook congee herself. She scalded the entire back of her left hand. Yulan finally came home the next afternoon, Yao's fever broken. She glanced at the blisters on Elena's hand and said, "How could you be so careless?" The scar was still there. Faint, like a faded plum blossom. "Miss Chin," the housekeeper said timidly. "The fruit platter is ready." "Thanks." Elena picked up the platter and walked out, her face already arranged into a proper, polite smile. Her brother-in-law's promotion was happy news. As his sister-in-law, of course she was happy for him. At the dinner table, Yulan made sure everyone ate well while constantly piling food onto Yao and Yuan's plates. Between bites, she rattled off stories from Yao's childhood. Yao was so smart from the time she was little. Reciting Tang poetry at 3, dancing at 5. All her teachers said she had talent. Yulan's chest puffed with pride. If she hadn't chosen to focus on family, she'd be a career woman today, no question. Mom, Yao drew out the word, feigning annoyance. I'm happy where I am. Yuan says I can just be a full-time wife. He'll take care of me. That's right, I'll take care of you. Yuan Chang reached over and stroked Yao's hair, the gesture tender. Elena kept her head down and ate. By the way, Elena, where are you working now? Her aunt suddenly turned the conversation toward her. All eyes swiveled in her direction. A biotech company, she said briefly. Oh, private sector. Her aunt's tone flattened. Not government. Not very stable, is it? It's fine. What do you mean, fine? Yulan put down her chopsticks. We told you to take the civil service exam. We told you to get a hospital job. You wouldn't listen. You had to go to some private company. Now look at you, no boyfriend at your age. Take your sister for example. Mom. Yao cut in, her voice soft. Elena has her own ideas. Don't keep picking on her. It sounded like she was defending Elena. But Elena caught the faint smile tugging at the corner of Yao's mouth. I'm not picking on her. I'm concerned. Yulan sighed. Isn't it a mother's duty to worry about her daughters? Elena, your brother-in-law's hospital has a man in the lab. He's divorced, but he's a decent sort. Mom. Elena finally spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but for some reason the whole table went quiet. I have a boyfriend. A beat of silence. Then Yulan's eyes lit up. Really? What does he do? How old is he? What's his family like? He's in investments. A year older than me. His family is well off. How well off? Yulan pressed. Does he own property? How many places? What do his parents do? Mom. Yao cut in again, her tone light and airy. Elena's too shy to say. Stop pushing. Good men aren't that easy to find. Elena, don't be too picky. Settling for someone decent is fine. The words were pretty on the surface. The subtext was sharper, you can't get anyone good. Elena looked up at her sister, her expression calm. He owns 3 properties. One in the Tongshen Ipin complex. His parents are in manufacturing, family assets in the tens of billions. He graduated from Yale School of Management. The fund he runs is in the several billion range. The whole table went silent. Yulan's mouth hung open like a fish gasping on a dock. Her aunt's expression shifted from skeptical to stunned. Yao's smile froze solid. Yuan stopped peeling a shrimp and looked up. Elena, Yulan said, her voice changed, you're not joking, are you? Have I ever joked? Then, when are you bringing him home to meet us? He's traveling for work. Some other time. Elena picked up a piece of fish and carefully deboned it. By the way, our company is preparing for a funding round. His fund might invest. He says my project has a lot of potential. The valuation is at least 2 billion. The table went dead quiet. Yao's chopsticks clattered onto the table. She scrambled to pick them up, her smile forced. That's great, Elena. You've done well. Yulan froze for a few seconds, then broke into a beaming smile and dropped a piece of spare rib into Elena's bowl. I always said our Elena was a smart girl. No way she wouldn't succeed. Here, eat more. You're so thin. The rib glistened with oil, sitting in her bowl. A stark contrast to the plain rice that had been there before. Elena stared at the rib. She didn't pick up her chopsticks. 26 years. This was the first time Yulan had ever put food in her bowl. She found it almost funny. Direction returned to the country on the first day of spring. He emerged from the VIP corridor at Pudong Airport, a black trench coat draped over his lean frame. Sharp features. Thin lips pressed together. Everything about him radiated quiet aloofness. He was the head of Shen Capital. 32 years old. Already a legend in global investment circles. But few people knew that his greatest passion wasn't making money, it was the life sciences. Genetics, in particular. That was what had drawn him to Elena. He'd been looking for a partner brilliant enough to tackle the frontiers that traditional academia was too timid to approach. Dr. Chin. He nodded toward the young woman in the white lab coat waiting at the pickup area. Elena looked up and for a moment forgot to breathe. She'd seen Derek in video calls. She knew he was young, handsome, commanding. But in person he was something else, a silent iceberg, calm on the surface, terrifying power underneath. Mr. Shen. She extended her hand. Welcome back. Derek took her hand. His palm was warm and dry, fingertips calloused, not what you'd expect from a man worth billions. I read your project report, he said, getting straight to business as his assistant went to get the car. They walked side by side. The stem cell therapy for intrauterine adhesions. Bold thinking. Have you considered the commercialization path? Let's get through phase 2 first, Elena said flatly. Derek's mouth curved slightly, a fleeting smile that softened his entire face. Dr. Chin, you're calmer than most founders I've met. Because I'm not treating it as a business, Elena said. I actually want to fix something. What she didn't say, she wanted to cure a disease called favoritism, a disease that had lived in her mother's blood since the day she was born. Incurable. Fatal. She wasn't the patient. She was the one who'd been given up on. Only people who'd been on the losing end of favoritism could understand that pain. But she was tired of hating. Hate was exhausting. She just wanted to live well, well enough to make them regret. Derek glanced sideways at her, his gaze measuring. There was a rare clarity in this girl. A steadiness. Neither sycophantic nor arrogant. Like a wild orchid that had bloomed alone in the mountains for years, needing no audience. Come on, he said. Let's get dinner. Your treat. Of course. Derek opened the car door for her. It's the bare minimum for an investor. 3 days later, Elena formally brought Derek home to meet her parents. She'd given advance notice. Yulan was so excited she couldn't sleep the night before. First thing in the morning, she had the housekeeper cleaning every surface. Even the curtains got swapped out. Jiang Wo was summoned back from his business trip, sitting on the sofa in a suit like he was waiting for a state inspection. Mom, isn't this a bit much? Yao leaned on the sofa, cracking sunflower seeds, her tone sour. He's just a boyfriend. You're acting like you're receiving a VIP. What do you mean, just a boyfriend? Yulan swatted her arm playfully. Your sister finally found a good one. Of course we parents should show some respect. By the way, is Yuan coming today? He has surgery tonight. Can't make it. Too bad. I wanted him to help entertain. Yao didn't respond. She stared at her phone. When the doorbell rang, Yulan answered it herself. The smile froze on her face the moment she opened the door. Derek Shen stood there with 2 boxes of premium bird's nest and a bottle of limited edition red wine, the kind she'd seen on TV, retailing for 6 figures. But it wasn't the gifts that made her freeze. It was the man himself. He wore a charcoal cashmere coat over a bespoke black suit. Cufflinks gleamed under the light. Sharp features. Cool gaze. The kind of energy that said, stay back. Hello, Mrs. Cheen, he said, with a slight nod. His voice was low and pleasant. Hello, hello. Yulan's voice quavered. Come in, come in. As Derek stepped inside, Yao dropped her sunflower seeds. She stared at him, eyes wide, jealousy practically dripping off her. Elena stood beside Derek, her arm naturally linked through his. Mom, this is Derek Shen. Shen. Yulan pressed a hand to her chest. Shen capital Shen. You've heard of me. Derek smiled politely. Of course she'd heard of him. Yulan had spent all last night Googling Derek Shen's profile. Forbes listed young billionaire. Family assets in the tens of billions. Investments all over the world. The man was a walking gold mine. She never imagined this legendary figure could be her younger daughter's boyfriend. At dinner, Yulan's enthusiasm bordered on sycophantic. She kept piling food on Derek's plate and refilling his glass. Have some more, Derek. Derek, what's your family like? Derek, what do you like to do in your free time? She called him by his first name like she'd known him for 8 lifetimes. Jiang Wo wore a broad smile too. He even brought out the Qin family genealogy, bragging that one of their ancestors had passed the imperial exams. The crass, calculating face he wore in business was on full display. Derek answered each question politely. Always measured. Always appropriate. Elena ate quietly beside him, exchanging the occasional glance with Derek. They weren't overly affectionate, but the quiet understanding between them made Yao's chest tighten. Derek, Yulan finally couldn't resist. What do you think of our Elena? Derek put down his chopsticks and looked seriously at Elena. She is the smartest woman I have ever met, he said. His voice was quiet, but every word landed with weight. And my most respected partner. Partner? Jiang Wo looked confused. Not girlfriend. Girlfriend, yes. Derek corrected. But also partner. The patents Elena holds may reshape the landscape of global assisted reproductive medicine. Being with her is an honor for me. The word honor crashed into everyone's ears like a hammer. Yulan nearly dropped her chopsticks. She didn't understand the technical jargon, but reshape global and honor were clear enough. She suddenly realized that her younger daughter, the one she'd always ignored, was standing at a height she couldn't even comprehend. Yao's face went pale. She set her chopsticks down abruptly. I'm not feeling well. I'm going to my room. Yao. Yulan frowned. Morning sickness. Yao forced a smile and walked away. Yulan laughed awkwardly. Pregnancy makes her fragile. Elena watched her sisters retreating back. She picked up a piece of fish and chewed slowly. The fish was tender and fresh. But there was no vengeful pleasure in her chest. Just a dull ache she couldn't quite name. Because beneath all the hurt, she'd once wanted nothing more than a real hug from her mother. This wasn't love. It was an investment. Her mother had never loved her. She loved the value that had suddenly appeared on her. Like she'd never believed her younger daughter could amount to anything, but now that the proof was sitting in front of her, she could flip her face in an instant. How ridiculous. How true. Yao went to her room and immediately dialed Yuan. I can't come back tonight, Yuan said on the other end, his voice low. Emergency surgery. The Derek Shen. Yao took a deep breath. He's really with Elena. Do you know what he valued her project at? 2 billion. Silence on the other end. Yao, did you get that test report I asked for? You suspect her? Yao's voice went sharp. Are you insane? I saw the report. All the data checked out. Her technique is theoretically solid. I just don't understand how she actually did it. She caught herself and stopped. Yuan sighed. All right. Get some rest. Don't overthink. After the call ended, Yao gripped her phone until her knuckles went white. She couldn't accept it. The sister who'd always been inferior. The sister their mother ignored, their relatives looked down on. How could she suddenly climb higher than all of them? She remembered the way Yulan had fawned over Derek. The way Jiang Wo had grinned. And Elena's calm gaze. There was no gloating in it. No triumph. Only a quiet, almost pitying distance. Like she'd never considered these people worth her attention in the first place. That realization burned Yao to the core. Meanwhile, Elena and Derek had said their goodbyes and were driving back to the city. The night was thick. Lights on the overpass streaked past like shooting stars. Your mother. Derek said suddenly. She's not good to you. It was a statement, not a question. Elena leaned against the passenger seat, watching the darkness outside. She didn't deny it. I'm used to it. Derek was quiet for a moment. His fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel. My mother died when I was 7, he said, his voice low. My father remarried. My stepmother brought a son with her. After that, I was invisible in that house. Elena turned to look at him, surprised. She'd assumed someone like Derek had been adored his whole life. What happened? She asked. I went abroad at 15. Made my own way. 5 years ago, my father's company hit a crisis and he came begging. Derek glanced at her, a meaningful glint in his eye. I bought out all his shares. Made him and his new family move out of the old house. Elena stared for a moment, then laughed softly. That's ruthless. It's not ruthless, Derek said. It's rules. Blood isn't blackmail. Love isn't an excuse for abuse. They did what they did to me. I did what I did to them. Fair exchange. Elena was quiet for a long time. Outside, the city glittered with a million lights. In each one, someone was loved, someone was forgotten, someone was licking their wounds in the dark. You're right, she said quietly. It's fair. She realized something in that moment. She didn't need anyone's approval. Didn't need anyone's apology or regret. She just needed to live a life so brilliant it would blind the people who'd once tried to stamp her out. That was enough. The turning point came faster than anyone expected. 1 month later, Yao was rushed to Jiangda University Hospital with a massive hemorrhage. Yuan was on duty. His face went pale when he got the news. He ran to the emergency room. Rh-negative blood type. Partial uterine rupture, the OBGYN's voice was tight. We need to operate now or we lose both mother and child. Get O-negative, stat. But the blood bank came back with devastating news, Rh-negative supply was low. The nearest blood center was 50 kilometers away. At least an hour to deliver. We don't have an hour. The OBGYN was sweating. She's bleeding too fast. She has 30 minutes, max. Yao lay on the emergency table, pale as paper. Blood soaked through the sheets beneath her. Yuan gripped her hand, his own shaking, his voice steady through sheer force of will. Yao, hold on. The blood is coming. Yuan. Yao's voice was barely a whisper. I'm so cold. Outside, Yulan was crying so hard she could barely stand. Jiang Wo was frantic, making calls to God knows who. Elena, call Elena. Yulan grabbed Jiang Wo's arm. She does that research stuff. She must know people. She can help. The call reached Elena while she was in the lab discussing clinical trial data with Derek. Elena. You have to come. Your sister is dying. Yulan's voice was shrill, hysterical. Massive bleeding. Not enough blood. You have connections, right? Please. Elena held the phone and froze. Then she was on her feet, grabbing her coat. What's going on? Derek followed. My sister. Postpartum hemorrhage. Rh negative. Not enough blood. She was already moving. Your fund has stakes in blood products companies, right? Can you get me blood? Fast. Derek didn't waste words. He made a call. 15 minutes later, a helicopter lifted off from a pharmaceutical company's rooftop, carrying 8 units of O-negative blood that had been rushed out of their corporate blood bank. It flew straight for the helipad on top of Jiangda University Hospital. By the time Elena arrived, the blood was already being rushed into the OR. Yulan saw her and lunged forward like she was a lifeline, throwing her arms around her. Elena. You're here. You came. Your sister is going to be okay. Elena stood frozen in her mother's embrace, barely able to breathe. 26 years. This was the first time Yulan had ever hugged her. Not because she needed love. Because she'd finally become useful. The OR light glowed red. The corridor smelled of disinfectant. Elena stood there in her mother's arms, but her body felt cold. Derek stepped behind her. Silently, he took her hand. His grip was warm and strong. A promise without words. The surgery lasted 4 hours. They saved Yao's uterus. They saved the baby. But the hemorrhage had done severe damage. Even after a successful delivery, she would never carry another child. When Yuan heard the news, he was silent for a long time. His silence was full of disappointment. When Yao woke, the first person she saw was Yuan. He sat beside her bed, holding her hand, eyes rimmed with red. Yao. The baby. Yao's voice was weak. Is the baby okay? The baby is fine. Yuan said. A boy. Tears leaked from the corners of Yao's eyes. Then she saw Elena in the corner of the room. Elena was leaning against the wall, tablet in hand, working. Her expression was neutral. Unreadable. Elena. Yao's voice cracked. Thank you. Mom said you got the blood. Elena looked up. Of course. Her voice was calm. We're family. She said it so softly it was almost a sigh. Yao opened her mouth. Closed it. She remembered all the times she'd subtly cut Elena down in front of their mother. Remembered her smug, don't be too picky. Remembered how she'd basked in the favoritism and never once spoken up for her sister. And today, the sister she'd stepped on had saved her life and her child's. That cut deeper than revenge ever could. After Yao was discharged, the atmosphere in the Qin household shifted. Yulan started calling Elena constantly. Asking about her health. Asking about her work. Asking about her relationship with Derek. Pushing for marriage. Derek is such a good catch. Don't let him get away. Your sister's still weak. Come visit her more often. That patent of yours, how much is it really worth? I'm not after your money, I just care about you. Elena listened to every call. She responded briefly. Never warm, never cold. Polite. Controlled. She was already building a wall. Her lawyers had confirmed that her patents and equity structure were designed to have zero legal connection to the Qin family. She was even setting up a trust fund, but the beneficiary list would not include anyone from that house. Only by severing those ties legally could she truly be free. She knew why her mother was being nice. Not guilt. Not revelation. Value. That kind of love made her sick. The real shift came late one night. Elena had worked late. She got home just past 1 in the morning. When she opened the door, she found the entryway light still on. Her slippers were set out neatly by the door, toes pointing outward, ready to slip on. On the dining table was a thermos. She opened it, warm pear and snow fungus soup. A note was tucked underneath. Drink this before bed. Good for your lungs. Add honey if it's not sweet enough. It's in the second cabinet on the left. Mom. Elena stood in front of the table and stared at the note. Yulan's handwriting was sloppy, like a child's. She'd barely gone to school. Married Zhang Wo at 18. Spent her whole life tending to the house and pouring all her love into her firstborn daughter. She'd never left Elena food before. Never written her a note. Never waited up for her. Now she had. But Elena felt only sadness. Not because she was touched. Because she finally understood, her mother had always known how to love. She knew how to care for a daughter. She knew how to make soup and leave a note in the middle of the night. She'd always known. She just never applied it to Elena. And now this love felt less like affection and more like an investment. Elena drank the soup, spoonful by spoonful. It was sweet, but her throat burned. When she finished, she washed the bowl and crumpled the note into the trash. The next morning, Yulan saw the crumpled note in the garbage. She said nothing. But she never left Elena food again. She probably understood by then, some things, once missed, were gone forever. Love that arrives too late doesn't arrive at all. A few months later, Yao gave birth. A healthy boy, his features like Yuan's. The baby's full moon celebration was a lavish affair, every relative came. Elena came too. With Derek. Halfway through the banquet, Yuan stood up with a glass and walked over to Elena. Elena, let me toast you, he said. For what you did for Yao that day. Thank you. Elena clinked glasses with him. And also, Yuan said, lowering his voice, I need to ask a favor. What? After Yao's hemorrhage, her uterus was badly damaged. She can't have more children. I heard you're researching endometrial regeneration, could you? He didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. Elena held her glass. She didn't answer immediately. She looked at Yuan Chang. That handsome face, once so full of pride, now had a hint of desperation in it. The golden son-in-law her mother had bragged about was standing in front of her, head bowed, like he was begging. Yuan, she said quietly. My technology is still in phase 2 clinical trials. It's only for specific indications. It's not something you can just pay for. Yuan's expression shifted. And clinical trials have risks, Elena continued calmly. Are you sure Yao's body can handle it? Yuan was silent. So I'm sorry. Elena lifted her glass and took a sip. I can't help you. She set the glass down and turned to walk away. After a few steps, she stopped. She didn't turn around. Nobody came when I was hospitalized for appendicitis, she said, her voice barely audible. Only Yuan could hear. His face went white. The hand holding his glass trembled. Elena walked away without looking back. She moved toward Derek, who was surrounded by relatives, handling them with ease. His eyes had been tracking her. When she reached him, he naturally slipped an arm around her waist and leaned in. Okay. Okay. She looked up at him and smiled. Come on. Let's go home. Yeah. They left the banquet hall together, the noise of clinking glasses and chattering relatives fading behind them. Envious stares. Yulan's lips parting as if to speak. Yao's complicated gaze. Elena didn't look back. When they stepped out of the hotel, the autumn breeze carried the scent of osmanthus. She breathed deep, feeling like a boulder that had been crushing her chest for 20 years finally shifted. Elena. Derek said her full name. Yeah. Have you ever wondered why your mother always favored your sister? Elena hesitated. Her footsteps slowed. Then she kept walking. I don't know. I don't want to know. Maybe some people just play favorites. No logic to it. What if there is a reason? Derek's voice dropped. Serious. What if it's darker than you think? Elena stopped walking and turned. In the darkness, his face was half lit, half shadowed. Something in his eyes she couldn't read. What do you mean? I found some things out. Derek paused. But I think your mother should tell you herself. Elena's heart tightened. She sensed that Derek was holding something back. Something that might finally explain the whole story. The childhood of favoritism. The wound she'd never been able to close. What do you know? She pressed. Derek was silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed. Let your mother tell you. It's her debt to pay. Elena stared at him. The unease in her chest deepened. A month later, Elena got a call from Yulan. Elena, come home. Yulan's voice sounded wrong. Hoarse. Exhausted. All the forced cheerfulness was gone. I need to tell you something. Elena held the phone. She glanced at Derek, who was looking at reports on the couch opposite. What is it? Just come. Yulan hung up. Elena stared at the phone screen. The knot in her stomach tightened. I'm coming with you. Derek put down his reports and got his coat. When they got to the Chin house, only Yulan was there. Jiang Wo was out of town. Yao had taken the baby to her in-laws. The house was quiet, curtains half drawn, the living room dim. Yulan sat on the sofa, an old tin box in front of her. She looked like she'd been crying, eyes red and swollen, her hair grayer than before. She'd aged a decade. Mom. Elena sat down across from her. What happened? Yulan looked up. Her expression was unreadable, guilt, pain, fear. Something else Elena couldn't name. Elena. Yulan's voice shook. I'm sorry. Elena waited. There's something I never told you. Yulan opened the tin box. Inside was a stack of yellowed papers. On top lay a handwritten letter. This is from your birth mother. Elena felt like a hammer had slammed into her skull. Her blood went cold. What? You're not my daughter. Yulan's tears spilled over. You're your father's child. With another woman. Elena sat motionless. She could hear her own heartbeat. 1, 2, 3. A dull knife cutting meat. Your real mother left as soon as you were born. Your father brought you home and told me to raise you. Yulan wiped her tears, her voice breaking. I was pregnant with Yao then. I didn't want you. But your father said, either I raise you or he divorces me and I get nothing. So that's why you favored Yao. Elena's voice was eerily calm. I couldn't help it. Yulan covered her face. Every time I looked at you, I saw that woman. I knew you were innocent, but I just couldn't. She broke down sobbing. The living room filled with her muffled cries and the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Elena sat there, looking at the aging woman in front of her. 26 years. 26 years of neglect. Of coldness. Of being treated differently. 26 years of wondering what was wrong with her. And now she finally had the answer. She hadn't done anything wrong. She hadn't been lacking. She hadn't been unworthy of love. She was just the shadow of another woman. The woman Yulan had hated her whole life, and yet had been forced to raise. Elena felt the strangest urge to laugh. All these years. The favoritism. It was just because she was the product of an affair. A thorn in the marriage. The projection of all Yulan's rage and pain. She laughed. She laughed until tears ran down her face. Yulan was stunned, watching her through blurred eyes. Elena. So. Elena stopped laughing and wiped her eyes. All these years. You took it out on me. And all this time, I thought I was the one who wasn't good enough. She stood up, looking down at Yulan. Thank you for telling me the truth. At least now I know, I never owed you anything. Quite the opposite. Jangwo. You. All of you. You owe me a normal life. She took the tin box and walked to the door. Elena. Yulan called after her. Where are you going? Elena didn't answer. She walked out the door. The sunlight was blinding. She squinted up at the sky. Derek was leaning against the car, waiting. When he saw her come out, he straightened up. His eyes went to the tin box in her arms, then to her red-rimmed eyes. You know now? He asked quietly. I know. Derek said nothing. He just opened his arms. Elena walked over and buried her face in his chest. She didn't cry. She was just so tired. He's not my father, she said, her voice muffled. Biologically, maybe. Derek rubbed her back gently. Everything else is up to you. Elena took a deep breath and lifted her head. Her eyes were still red, but her gaze had regained its usual clarity. Find her for me, she said. My birth mother. Who she is. Where she is. Why she left. Derek looked at her. Then he nodded. Okay. 3 months later, Elena boarded a flight to the M country. In those 3 months, Derek's people had dug up almost everything. They tracked down Jangwo's old business partners. Found the old neighbors. Interviewed people from Yulan's side of the family. The truth came together piece by piece. Elena's birth mother was Wen Yun. She was Jangwo's business partner's sister, an M-country citizen from a wealthy family. She'd come to China to help her brother with his business and met Jangwo. Wen was young, beautiful, talented, from a good family. Jangwo pursued her relentlessly. He hid the fact that he was married until Wen was 5 months pregnant, when Yulan showed up and revealed everything. Wen chose to leave. She didn't fight Jangwo. She didn't terminate the pregnancy. She gave birth to Elena on her own and planned to take her back to the M country. But Jangwo got down on his knees and begged her to leave the child with him, saying Yulan couldn't have children, saying the baby was the Qin family's only bloodline and couldn't be lost. Wen relented. She left 1-month-old Elena with Jangwo. She left a letter, telling him that if the child was ever mistreated, she would come back and take her. Then she returned to the M country alone. And disappeared. Jangwo brought Elena home and told Yulan, raise her or divorce me and get nothing. Yulan chose the former. But she poured all her hatred onto an innocent infant. That was the root of every bit of favoritism. Elena finished reading the investigation report and sat in her office for an entire afternoon. Just staring out the window. The glass reflected her face. 26 years old. Clear features. A tiny mole at the corner of her mouth. It looked exactly like the face in the black and white photo in the file. She looked like her mother. The woman she'd never met. The woman who'd left her in the mud. On the flight across the Pacific, Elena leaned against the window, eyes closed. She didn't know what would happen when she met Wen Yun. She might cry. She might rage. She might forgive. She might just look at her once and walk away. But she had to see her. It was the last step toward making peace with her past. Derek sat beside her. His fingers found hers, offering quiet warmth. Nervous? He asked softly. A little, she said without opening her eyes. I don't know what she'll be like. You'll find out when you get there. They landed in San Francisco at 3 in the afternoon. California's sunlight was bright and fierce. A black sedan picked them up, driven by a silent middle-aged man. One lived in a white villa on the outskirts of San Francisco. Red roses filled the yard. The woman who answered the door wore an ivory silk blouse. Her hair was neatly pinned. Her features mirrored Elena's, close enough to see it instantly. Elena looked at her like she was looking in a mirror. Blood was stronger than distance, even 26 years apart, standing together, the resemblance was unmistakable. Elena. Wen's hands were trembling. Her voice was trembling. You came. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she tilted her head and asked, why didn't you take me with you? She'd been waiting 26 years to ask that question. Wen's tears came all at once. I tried, she said, her voice shaking. I had everything planned. But your father, he got on his knees and begged me. He said Yulan couldn't have children. He said you were his only chance. I was weak. But did you know, Elena said softly, that Yulan had a daughter of her own? And that I grew up in that house, lower than a dog. The words hit Wen like a blade. She stumbled backward, gripping the doorframe, her face drained of color. I'm sorry. She sobbed. I found out later, but by then Too late. She was already back in the M country. Already rebuilding her life. Too many obstacles. Too much fear. Elena watched her cry. And slowly, the storm inside her began to quiet. She didn't hate her. Wen was a victim too. Deceived by Jiangwo. Constrained by the time she lived in. She'd made the best choice she knew how. Cowardice wasn't a crime. Running wasn't a crime. She just hadn't been strong enough to protect herself, let alone her child. That was human. Not evil. Don't cry. Elena stepped forward and awkwardly patted her shoulder. I'm here now. Wen looked up, her eyes wet. You don't hate me. I did, Elena admitted. But I don't want to anymore. Hate is too heavy. I want to live light. Wen pulled her into a hug. She cried like a child. Derek stood at the door, watching. A small smile touched his lips. A proud smile. Elena let herself be held by this stranger who was also her mother. Felt the trembling. The hot tears. They shared blood but were strangers. And yet this embrace was real. Warm. Hers alone. She closed her eyes and let the tears fall. All the years of pain. The resentment. The loneliness. They found a resting place in that moment. She finally knew she wasn't the one the world had abandoned. It was just that the gears of fate had spun too fast, and the people who mattered most had been thrown onto different tracks. After Elena returned from the M country, her life found its new rhythm. Her endometrial stem cell in situ induction and regeneration technology passed phase 2 clinical trials and moved to phase 3 large-scale testing. Industry leaders called it the most significant breakthrough in assisted reproductive medicine in the past decade. Major institutions around the world were lining up to collaborate. Elena's valuation soared. Conservative estimates put her technology's market potential at over 5 billion yuan, and climbing with every clinical advancement. She'd finally reached the heights they could never touch. Meanwhile, things were falling apart in the Qin household. Yuan Chang was demoted after a surgical error. The media got hold of it, and his career never recovered. Yao moved back to her mother's house with the baby. She and Yuan began a long separation. Eventually, photos surfaced of Yuan with another woman at a bar. Yao filed for divorce over the phone. Yulan's blood pressure spiked. Zhang Wo's business collapsed. He came to Elena for money. Derek's assistant turned him away at the door. Yulan was shattered. Her proudest daughter was divorced. The golden son-in-law had fallen. Her husband was bankrupt. She started sending Elena long text messages full of remorse, how wrong she'd been, how she wanted Elena to come home, how she wanted to make it up to her. Elena never replied. Those apologies were too little, too late. She had a real family now. 1. Derek. After the Phase 3 trial was confirmed, Elena set up a trust fund with her own money. It was dedicated to providing therapy and education for children from broken homes. She called it Sunny Branch, a branch reaching for the sunlight. It was her goodbye to the past. And a promise for the future. In the autumn of the third year, Elena and Derek got married in San Francisco. The ceremony was small. Just one and a few close friends. They exchanged rings in Wen's rose garden. White doves rose from the grass. Sunlight caught Elena's wedding dress and made it glow. Derek looked at Elena, his gaze warm as spring water. "Dr. Cheen," he said. "Will you marry me?" "Depends on your performance." Elena smiled, the light in her eyes brighter than any diamond. They kissed in a shower of petals, like something out of a painting. The year after the wedding, Elena had a daughter. Derek gave her a nickname, Wan, meaning little warmth. Her official name was Jianwei Shen. Elena chose it, see the small things and understand the big. She wanted her daughter to have eyes that saw through the world. Wen held her granddaughter, tears streaming down her face. 26 years ago she hadn't been able to raise her own daughter. Now she had this tiny, soft little person to hold. She apologized again in the delivery room. Elena took her wrinkled hand and said, "Mom, it's okay. What you owed me, she's already paid it back to me. Look how wonderful she is. She looks just like me." In that moment, every knot came undone. Sunlight flooded the room, falling on their clasped hands, falling on Elena's tear-streaked face and her soft smile. One afternoon when Wan was 3, Elena sat on a garden swing watching her daughter chase butterflies. Her phone buzzed. She looked down. A photo from Yulan. In it, Yao was squatting in a cramped rental kitchen, washing vegetables. Her hair was carelessly tied back. She wore a faded old shirt. She looked decades older than she was. Yulan had added a caption, "Elena, can't you help your sister? She's struggling. You're still." The rest was cut off. Elena stared for a second. Then she smiled, not bitterly, but with something like release. She didn't open the photo. She didn't reply. She just turned the phone face down on her knee. Wan ran over, her chubby hand clutching a dandelion. "Mama, look." Elena lifted her daughter onto her lap. "Blow," she said, smiling. "And make a wish." Wan puffed out her cheeks and blew. The dandelion fluff scattered into the golden afternoon light, each tiny seed drifting away like a parachute. Elena watched them go. Some seeds only take root when they've been carried away from the mother plant, blown to distant soil by the wind. She was like that too. Blood was just a cord. Cut it, and you were two separate people. No one was obligated to carry another's life. Elena held her daughter and watched the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the whole sky a gentle, warm orange. The light was behind her. The road lay ahead. She knew, the rest of her life would be nothing but sunshine.